So much for joining me. We are at Gumla, Ranchi, at Jharkhand. We're with Reetika Khera and Dreze, and this is a Jan Sunwai that's going to take place on the National Food Security Act and how it's a big public hearing on how its progress has been in the 2 years since it's been implemented in 6 states in India: Chhattisgarh, Odisha, Madhya Pradesh, Jharkhand, Bihar and West Bengal. This has been a pretty remarkable survey, 3,600 households, completely randomized, and the survey has pulled out lots of interesting things. What to you really stands out?
Okay, so just to clarify about the survey, it was conducted by student volunteers from universities all over India, and basically we went to 6 randomly selected villages in each of 6 states: Bihar, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, Odisha, West Bengal and Chhattisgarh. And in these villages, the students went from house to every household in the central villages and asked people whether they had a ration card, what they were getting from the PDS shop, whether they had complaints about the quality of food grain and all that. Yeah. So that's basically the survey. And to cut a long story short, one of the big findings is that in 4 of these 6 states, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Odisha and West Bengal, there seems to have been a lot of progress in the integrity of the public distribution system. Yeah. And the Food Security Act seems to be making a really important contribution towards food security. Yeah. So there are still, of course, all kinds of problems, but the system is functioning relatively well and covers the bulk of the rural population as it should. In Bihar and Jharkhand, the situation is not so rosy. There has been a huge improvement still compared to what you would have found here 5 to 10 years ago. But there's still a lot of work to do in completing the process of these reforms and achieving the standards that have been achieved in the other states.
Yeah. Do you think that, Jharkhand having declared drought for every single district, has PDS, and you're mentioning that it really wasn't its best performance amongst the 6 states. Did it even manage to provide a basic safety net?
One part of the problem is identification issues and exclusion. And then still a fair amount of corruption, much less than before. 10 years ago, about 90% of the food grains here was siphoned off from the PDS, so it's not like that anymore. But still people get a little less than they should, and often they pay a little more than they should also. So corruption. In Bihar it's also like that, if anything perhaps a little worse. And also in Bihar still a lot of issues of supply chain management. So like, here in Jharkhand by and large they do give the rations month by month. In Bihar it's still IGPC, sometimes 1 month late, even 2 months late. Sometimes it doesn't come at all. And sometimes for months at a time, even people don't get food grains, which is something we've not seen in any of the other sample states. So really huge problems of corruption and supply management.
I think in Bihar also, it used to be the worst PDS in the country. Throughout the 2000s, the leakage rates were around 90%. Around 2010-11, something began to change, and then there were a series of small surveys between 2010 to 2013-14, which were showing that now the leakages have gone down to 20 to 30%. Mm-hmm. In this survey, we would have expected that Bihar would have built on the progress that it had made, between 2010 to 2015. But it seems a little bit like the government is going back to sleep after they won the election.
So I think even though it jumped from 64 to 83%.
Yeah, so the coverage improved because of the rollout of the Food Security Act. And I think that's really a very important aspect of the Act, because it helps to reduce errors. Yeah. The coverage earlier was just too measly, and it obviously left out a huge number of deserving or people who should have been in the system. Yeah. So that was fixed because of the rollout. Yeah. But they have to fix many other issues, which the corruption is part of it. And when the coverage expanded so dramatically, they also had to put in place logistics. They need rakes, they need to transport all this grain to rural areas, and they were not able to do it. Now, yesterday in Gaya, for instance, in the village that we held, in the block that we held the Jan Sunwai, the marketing officer, the supply officer said that in fact they had lifted for all 12 months. But religious people were still being told by dealers it hasn't come. So unless you put a really clear schedule in place and you stick to it, it will open the door to corruption and allow people to cheat. Then they can always pass the buck.